Well, if this don't set you on fire, I guarantee your wood's wet because it makes you upset. Anybody that listens to this is going to be absolutely upset.
The following story is based on real-life criminal cases. Some names, details, and events have been altered for privacy and dramatic purposes. While every effort has been made to ensure accuracy, certain information may not be factually verified. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Some of these cases remain unsolved to this day.
The Jesse Mack Butler case, a high school athlete's crimes, and a sentence that shocked America. The call to the Stillwater Police Department came quietly, but what unfolded afterward would ignite outrage across the nation. It began as an investigation into one teenage girl's report of sexual assault and ended with the revelation that a promising high school athlete, once celebrated for his talent and charisma, had left a trail of pain and trauma among several young women in his community. The suspect's name was Jesse Mack Butler, a name that, until recently, appeared in local newspapers for his performance on the baseball field. But what police uncovered behind that small-town success story was far from admirable. They uncovered allegations of violence, control, and sexual assault. Multiple teenage girls would soon step forward, each telling eerily similar stories of abuse. Please, before we continue, do not forget to like and subscribe to Murder Mistress. Every like, every subscription, and every comment helps keep these stories alive. Stories that deserve to be told, stories that reveal the failures and the flaws in our justice system, and stories that remind us that accountability should never depend on privilege, power, or potential. Your support ensures that these victims' voices are not forgotten. From the beginning, investigators sensed that this was not a single isolated incident. One young woman came forward first, describing how what started as a relationship with Jesse Butler quickly turned violent. She spoke about moments where she felt trapped, when saying no did not matter, when fear replaced affection. When detectives began interviewing others who had dated Butler, a disturbing pattern emerged, a pattern of control, manipulation, and physical and sexual violence. According to court documents from Payne County, Oklahoma, Butler's victims were all teenagers. Each of them described being charmed at first. He was well-liked, polite in public, a talented athlete whose future seemed guaranteed. But in private, they said he changed. He became possessive. He became threatening. And eventually, he became violent. Some victims described being assaulted in moments when they tried to resist him or end a relationship. Others described being strangled, a detail that investigators would later highlight as deeply alarming. Experts on sexual violence note that strangulation is one of the most dangerous forms of assault because it often signals an escalation in control and in some cases can be a precursor to homicide. It is not simply physical violence. It is domination, a way to assert total power over a victim. As detectives gathered evidence, the picture became clearer. The evidence included messages, social media exchanges, and statements that backed the victim's claims. They uncovered details showing that Butler's violence was not random or impulsive. It was deliberate and repeated. When the case reached the Payne County District Attorney's office, prosecutors believed they had a strong case. The charges included multiple counts of rape and assault and battery. Each charge carried the potential for decades in prison if convicted. For the victims and their families, this was the moment they had been waiting for, the moment when justice might finally begin to take shape. But that hope would soon turn to outrage. Before the trial could even begin, Jesse Mack Butler accepted a plea deal. In exchange for pleading guilty to some of the charges, others would be dropped or reduced. Plea deals, while common in the justice system, always come with controversy. For survivors of sexual assault, they often represent compromise, a way to avoid reliving the trauma of testifying in court, but also a painful reminder that the offender may never face the full consequences of what they did. In this case, that compromise went far beyond what most could.
I keep coming back to how it happened. Sir, do you think that the courts are corrupt? Is that how you think that this deal was maneuvered?
Oh, absolutely. We're working on grand juries right there. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think we're going to see more cases like this. I think we're going to see, I'm working on a case that may be as shocking as this.
Except the plea deal meant Butler would avoid the kind of lengthy prison sentence that the original charges demanded. The courtroom, filled with families, advocates, and community members, fell silent as the terms were read aloud. Butler's sentence, described by many as shockingly lenient, included probation and potential for early release. The man accused of violently assaulting multiple teenage girls would spend far less time behind bars than the public expected. The reaction was swift. Advocacy groups, local residents, and legal experts all voiced outrage. Survivors and their families felt betrayed, not just by Butler, but by the system itself. In their view, justice had been denied. The case gained national attention as details spread online and through media coverage. To many, it felt like a repeat of a painful pattern. Young men from privileged backgrounds, particularly athletes, receiving leniency after committing acts of sexual violence. The comparison to the infamous Brock Turner case at Stanford was unavoidable. In both cases, young men with athletic potential were given sentences that seemed to prioritize their futures over the trauma of their victims. Community members organized protests, spoke out at town halls, and demanded reform. Across social media, people questioned how such crimes could result in such light punishment. Some pointed fingers at the influence of privilege, arguing that Butler's standing as an athlete played a role in how his case was handled. Others criticized the justice system more broadly, calling for new sentencing standards that reflect the gravity of sexual violence. For many in Stillwater, this was not just about one case, it was about the broader message it sent. What does it say to young survivors when someone convicted of multiple assaults walks away with minimal punishment? What does it say to victims everywhere who stay silent out of fear that no one will believe them or that the system will fail them again? Legal experts began weighing in. Some argued that prosecutors may have accepted the plea due to concerns about the victim's willingness to testify or the complexities of proving each assault beyond reasonable doubt. Others pushed back, saying that those factors should not excuse a sentence so light that it undermines public confidence in the entire system. The controversy reached state lawmakers, who began discussing whether Oklahoma should review its sentencing procedures for sexual assault cases. Victim advocacy organizations demanded mandatory minimums for certain offenses and more trauma-informed approaches in prosecution. The debate grew louder than ever before. Meanwhile, the victims of Jesse Mack Butler continued to live with the consequences of his actions. They had faced the humiliation of reporting deeply personal assaults, of being doubted, of reliving their trauma in interviews and statements. They had trusted that the system would protect them. But as many survivors of sexual violence have experienced, that trust is fragile, and once broken, it is hard to rebuild. Still, their courage cannot be understated. Without their willingness to speak out, Butler's crimes may have remained hidden. They faced scrutiny, gossip, and stigma, yet continued to push for justice. Their bravery has inspired new conversations about how society handles cases of sexual violence, especially when the perpetrator does not fit the stereotypical image of a criminal. As for Jesse Mack Butler, his name will forever be linked to one of the most controversial sentencing decisions in recent memory. What began as the story of a promising young athlete has ended as a cautionary tale, not only about